staff meeting for June 10th, 2020. We are meeting virtually, and the meeting has started at 5:35. First thing is are there any legislative updates, Jeff, that you know of?
Nothing comes to mind. At least nothing that's going through council at the moment. The mayor has mentioned a couple of ideas that he was kicking around, but I don't know if he's ready to bring them out for public consumption. I assume that if the mayor comes, he'll discuss, or as he so chooses. But
technically, the approval of the outside the box was after we met last. So that's because we met.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The last time, but fortunately we got that to them just before life changed. Okay, so
yeah. 4 new cases today.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I didn't read that.
Yeah, we had a spike today.
Great.
The minutes from the February 12th meeting, you should all have. I didn't resend it. No, March 11th. I'm sorry. That was the last time we met. And it was quite a long minutes. Thank you, Josh. I didn't see anything that we needed to question in it. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carried. Okay, so Beth, I need you to tell me each item from here on out.
Okay, so Roman numeral 3 are the brief reports on ongoing projects in progress as of March. So letter A is the poet laureate. That's you.
Laureate, yes. Wendy has been doing weekly little Facebook things through Arts West from her house, and people have been tuning in for that, and so that's a good start. And she has a virtual introduction to herself coming up. Is the date for that on there, Beth?
It is not. It's just it just says Poet Laureate Carol Patterson.
Okay, let me see if I can find it. I believe it's June.
Carol, I added a Facebook link to that event. It's on Friday, June 26th from 6 to 8 p.m.
Okay.
With Facebook and Zoom.
Okay. And I know that Emily's trying to get on me and asked me if the meeting had started, but when she emailed me, it hadn't. So I was hoping that she would join us.
Kelly is also having an issue getting onto the meeting. I'm not really sure why. I asked her if she updated Zoom, which I know that's been a big thing lately, is updating your Zoom.
Right.
It could be because if there is somebody who's like the host, they have to actually let people into the meeting.
Right. Right.
So I'm not sure if anybody has that capability to let these people in if they're kind of at the gateway.
Well, I forwarded the that to Emily Beveridge or someone else.
Maybe we could tell her to join by dialing in, and so she may not be able to be on screen, but she could at least be on the phone.
That is her again, and she's saying she can't get in. So if somebody can help her out, I don't know how.
If someone can type her email in the chat window here, I can try to resend the invitation to her.
I'm resending the invite now.
It's beverage.emily@gmail.com. And Beveridge is Beveridge.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, I just resent the link to both.
So the next thing on the agenda, I believe, is the outside the box. And
Correct.
neither person is on, but we kind of covered it by saying, oh, there's Kelly.
So sorry, I had
No,
to.
that's okay. Is there anything new about outside the box?
Anne, I had sent an email. Did you see her email?
I did.
Yeah, she and I have contacted all the people who all the rejection and all the acceptance. She is asking for information
Kind of
on
Here's Kelly.
where we go now.
That's okay. Is there anything new about outside the box?
And
Oh, why is that?
it's in an email.
That's an echo.
Oh,
I said that 3 minutes ago.
I had contacted all the people, it's still doing it. Who all the rejection and all the acceptance. She is asking for information on where we go now.
It sounds like someone needs to mute their mic, that they have a part of the broadcast running in the background previously.
Yeah, so if you're not talking, go ahead and mute so that way we don't hear your background noise.
Oh,
I said
So it looks like Jeff, Kelly, and Emily are not muted at the moment.
I was going to continue to talk about all the acceptance. She is.
There we go. Okay. Kelly, you want to go ahead and finish your discussion about art outside the box?
Okay, am I okay? Everybody can hear me? Okay. So what we need is information on how we move forward now that we feel that it's a good time to continue to get the wraps made. We're just not sure how to, what step to take next. Do we talk to the city about that, or people who were in charge of it the last time?
Okay. I believe the next step is Andy Chicky. Is that correct? Andrew?
So what you're asking for is to send the information along to the city so that the installs can begin. Is that what you're asking for?
Yes. The decisions of where they go and start the process for their production, and just get Andy Stone did it before.
Right. So it would go through Engineering and Public Works. You're welcome to send it to me, and I can send that along to EPW, since I'm probably the most efficient contact to move that along. So Kelly, go ahead and send it to me, and I'll send it to Bob Hetty, the Director of Engineering and Public Works, so we can get started on that.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Okay. Beth?
Next up is the music festival, Scott and Kelly.
Unmute and go.
No, Scott's not here, I take it.
There he
Yeah,
is.
I'm here.
Where are you?
I've been here.
Oh, there you are.
Okay. So really on our end, I mean, we had to halt all planning and all of that just due to all the obvious stuff. And you know, beyond that, it became pretty clear to me that getting sponsorship at any point between March and now just doesn't seem like in good taste. You know what I mean? Everybody's hurting right now. Our major sponsor, Hawken College, in a budget crunch. I don't feel comfortable asking venues who have been shut down for their donations that we would normally get. And so even if we were allowed to socially distance, we have no budget really. So I think I didn't make a big announcement because I didn't want to speak for AMAC. But I think it's pretty clear that we're not going to be doing that this year, or at least that's my feeling. I don't know if people are comfortable with doing a thing like that. Maybe by August they would be. That's fine, but still, it's a matter of the cash that it takes to actually put it together. So it's just going to give us more time to make next year really awesome. Thoughts?
Not know it had not officially been canceled.
Nope, I didn't officially do anything because I wanted to bring it to you.
Okay.
I sent you I had sent an email.
I got the email.
Yeah,
Yes,
and so
then I said, "Oh, it's canceled." Sadness.
But it's really, it would be, I could book it at this point, but the Hawking sponsorship last year was substantial enough that without that, I mean, that paid for our stage. And I feel like,
right.
I just don't have the way to, and again, I don't feel comfortable going around asking businesses who are hurting right now to chip in. That's my feeling anyways. I'd love to hear what everybody else has to say about it.
Well, and I believe that we'll probably still have a lot of the requirements for social distancing, and I mean it's just hard with a festival to keep people apart. Sure. And that's why they've already canceled, like in Columbus, they've canceled the large festivals for August.
Right. Because
they can't control the crowds and feel comfortable doing so.
Well, the city has also canceled pretty much all the downtown festivities that we have during the summer.
Right. And the other thing too is if you think about all the businesses uptown that might have been uncomfortable with all the street closures when we weren't going through this, they're all hurting too. I can only imagine that there'd be a lot of concern about us, even if they do get to finally reopen, have people go into their stores. No one's gonna appreciate that either, let alone me asking them for money on top of it. I just, does everybody feel the same as me about that? I mean, I
think it's a sensible thing to do.
With that, yeah. I do think that we should have an official statement.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It's not going to happen. Andrew, should that come from you? Should that come from me? Should that come from Scott and Kelly?
It should be a statement that comes from AMAC. Since Scott and Kelly are acting on behalf of AMAC, it's a subcommittee. So right. If it's moved through AMAC that it's being canceled officially, it would come as a statement from AMAC, and then we would post that through our official city sources as a statement on your behalf.
Okay, great.
Okay, so my suggestion is that Scott and Kelly, whose heart are totally in this, should make the statement in the way they want it announced and then send it to Andrew.
Or we can share it with you guys too. I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I like to keep things real and throw a wrench in the works. Not a wrench so much as just an idea. I mean, did you give any thought to trying to host some sort of virtual kind of music making thing?
Yeah, I've thought about it.
Yeah. I mean, I know part of the draw is because you bring in outside groups too. It's not just local groups.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just was curious if you'd given any thought to anything like that.
Yeah, I have, and I thought about that for Blackout Fest 2 that's getting canceled in the end of July, and I just I'm not really. That's something I guess I can kick around this week, but honestly, I'm kind of I was kind of resigned to just sort of let this one go, just because I feel like there's a lot of that, and there's almost too much of that. I feel like people are getting a little bit bored with that. I'm not saying has to be a definitive answer. I just don't know if I don't know how I feel about that, in terms of what it would take to get it together. And I could definitely get people to, play guitar on camera that everybody could watch on their laptop like you see all the time. I just feel like it's sort of, I don't know. The chemistry would have to be just right to make that, I think, to bring appeal to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And I'm not totally writing it off. I appreciate the idea for sure. And Kelly and I will definitely talk about that more too. I'm a little hesitant, especially because then to not do it so that it was amazing would bum me out. And you know what I mean? To have it be like kind of, if it was at all half-assed, especially in terms of representing the arts aside from, person playing or poetry being read on a camera, all the other stuff and all the visual artists, which you could show stuff. It just, I don't know. It seems like to do it right is the challenge, not just to pull it off.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Beth?
Question.
Yes.
If you're going to cancel, does that require a formal motion through AMAC to say it's canceled?
Perhaps. Do I have a motion to cancel this year's Music and Arts Festival?
Yes.
Scott moved. Second. Kelly, all in favor?
Aye.
Sorry.
Aye.
Motion carries, and Scott and Kelly will prepare that announcement. Thank you both. And sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is.
I really miss doing this sort of thing too, believe me. But I just, to next year.
Beth?
So next up is Roman numeral 4, current challenges. It says input from Andrew Chicky. There are 2 items: A, policies during COVID-19 pandemic and moving forward, and B, possible uses of outdoor city sites for events.
So, Mr. Chicky, take it away.
So to the first point, related to challenges for COVID around Athens and how that's been working so far, we have some obvious challenges being in a college town. And this is more of a general overview on kind of where the city is at. It might not be super applicable to AMAC, but I think it's helpful for understanding planning purposes. The first one being with the pandemic beginning when it did, it was right at the same time that the census was taking off. And at the moment, I know Paul Logue is working very diligently at how we recapture a lot of the count that we are missing. And this is not a discussion that's just local to Athens. We have college towns across the United States. I believe the mayor had mentioned earlier today, it was somewhere around the number of 300 plus college towns that are all in the same situation with this underreported count for the census. And that affects us and what we're able to do from federal funding all the way down to local activities. So we have a number of strategies that the city's working on, Paul Logue specifically, to try to figure out ways to recapture that. One of those in particular is advocating with the feds to allow universities to submit their enrollment data the same that they do for on-campus students for the off-campus residents. And that's really the challenge, is the off-campus housing. Imagine a student who's a senior, they went home for spring break, they graduated, they're not coming back to Athens. We don't have any mechanism to recapture that data. So that is, as far as challenges in COVID, that is a primary concern that we have right now, because it affects everything that we do for the next 10 years. So how it relates to AMAC, obviously less funding as it moves down means less ability to do things. And some of the initiatives that we want to do, we want to make sure that we can still track those and keep them moving along, but knowing that we have some other challenges that are likely to be budget related, unrelated to the university and our local businesses, being strapped, that we have this looming long-term challenge that we're working through as well. I know Councilmember Reisner has been tracking this as well as far as the census. So across the board, it is a serious issue that we're considering.
Yeah.
Okay, so discussion of the concept of the city developing some viable outdoor spaces for events. I've talked to Andrew a little about this, and to Emily, whose square says Andrew Chicky. So they're Chickies. You can change that, by the way, by going up to the right-hand side of your square.
I'm not sure why it's doing that. It's unusual. I think it's because the city has a corporate Zoom account, this government Zoom account. So
I'm fine with it.
It's all good. Specifically on Monday night, Paul Logue and myself had shared or relayed information that we had received from the Athens Uptown Business Association. We've been meeting with them regularly. There's a subcommittee that's been meeting weekly, not just related to outdoor space, but how to kick those businesses back into operation. And the mayor's meeting with the bar owners and other business members on a weekly basis as well. So we have kicked around a lot of ideas and have worked on several different proposals. Early on, there was discussion about shutting down entire streets. And when we did the surveying for that, it benefits some businesses for a short period of time, but it hurts other businesses in the way that when you look at a street closure, if we're shutting down one side of the street, that creates an advantage and a disadvantage at the same time, depending on where your business is located and what you're selling. It's been successful in other places, but based on the information that we were working through, may not have been the best solution for our uptown businesses. So as we were drilling things down consistently, and this has been true for a long time, parking spaces is always a contentious issue. Even in the summer months when there's ample parking around, there's a desire to have nearby parking for both people coming to visit and also businesses wanting parking in proximity to their location. So we did some research on some other things that other cities have done recently. And one of them is the idea of extended outdoor spaces into the public right-of-way. And this is what we presented to council on Monday. They're also known as parklets in some places. And if I'm able to, I would like to share my screen. Maybe that's not going to work because I don't see it here. which is okay. We'll.
You share screen?
It looks like I'm able to, but I don't see the PowerPoint presentation up on here. And
Let's see.
we'll try it. Let's see here. Can you see it?
Yeah.
See something anyway?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Let me switch it to. Yeah. Okay. So this is what we shared with City Council on Monday, and I'll spare you all of the details, but I do want to point out. As we were working on the goals, we wanted to think more than just the short-term need. So the short-term need is extending outdoor dining space for restaurants and cafes, the coffee shops where they have limited square footage inside, and trying to figure out ways that we can maintain the pedestrian lane of travel on the sidewalks. So that was a short-term goal or need, but long-term, if we want to make this successful and create something that could be part of the fabric of Uptown Athens, we came up with a few different goals that meet our planning vision that had been approved a couple of years ago and works into the comprehensive plan that's being finalized currently. And you'll see on the first bullet point. Sidewalk extensions for use by the general public at appropriate locations within public rights of way. That means specifically transferring metered parking spaces into spaces that can be used for another purpose. And if you go down to the last bullet point, promote public spaces for arts and culture. So the desire or the vision is that beyond just having a platform with some tables and chairs, that we have a space that we can do interactive things on. And that could be public art installations. Something that we've talked about in AMAC for many years was how do we promote visual art around the community that's not just murals, but could be sculpture, performance, that kind of thing. So thinking long-term with the end for AMAC would be how do we, once the legislation part of creating a permitting application process for these goes through, how do we determine or figure out a way for it to promote arts and culture in the long term? So obviously, right now we're looking at businesses and ways to help them, but as this becomes part of the fabric of Athens, how do we make this something that's attractive for people to come visit? So that's in a nutshell what we're looking at. How it works, I'll spare you that. Here's an example of our mapping. So if you look at the green squares, this is North Court Street. If you are heading up toward the Armory, so the Armory would be at the top of your screen. The green spaces would be eligible spaces for these extended outdoor space in the public right-of-way. Yellow being curb cuts or no-go zones, red being buffer zones or parking for a different use like taxi parking, and purple and blue being for other uses, specifically handicap and loading zones. So that is in the 30-second nutshell what is being worked on right now without getting into a lot of detail. But where I'm really interested is how do we make this work long-term for public art? And here's a couple of examples of being used for outdoor seating, where you'll see that there's design. There is, this is a good example of just a general seating with plants and beautification. This one's a little bit more minimalist. So that is the idea.
Okay, so where we come in, obviously, is the last bullet point, promote public spaces for the arts and culture. And I think that this could expand not only to just artwork being temporarily installed, that type of thing, but also performances. The questions come up a couple of times already this summer of possibilities of people asking, well, would outdoors work? I did do some personal brainstorming on this and came up with about 10, 12 locations that I thought would be viable spaces for this. If you got into a space that you wanted to use for a performance of some kind, and the one that most often comes to mind is top of the garage, and that is there. It's been done before. And so to establish a policy and how to go about creating things like that, some of our parks might work too. We did have a question this summer about a performance of theater performance at the skate park. So there are possibilities out there. I felt that the most difficult parts of it would be technically what do you bring in for tech, and how do you protect that, especially if it's a situation where somebody wants to perform more than one day. What do you do about the overnight? How is that taken care of? The cost, obviously, is a question. So what I felt was that we could kind of take this on as an AMAC ongoing study and project. We have experts on our, right here in front of my face. I wrote down Scott, Andy, Emily, and Scott Thompson, certainly, and Chelsea, all have expertise in some of this area. And I think that our collective brains could come up with some concepts of something that might work for Athens. In some cases, my thought was, okay, maybe we pick 3 or 4 spaces that might be viable and begin looking at how that would work and what it would look like. I don't think we can just have it citywide. Okay, we just have performances everywhere. I think that would be too complex and would kind of make it challenging to make it quality. So what do you think?
Well,
Hear from you. Who's
when it's me, Beth. When the West Union was redone after the fire and everything, I remember the mayor discussing a proposal for something sort of like that in some of that sidewalk space. Andrew, can you explain the difference between that and what you're talking about now?
So the sidewalk on Union Street was widened, and there was some beautification that happened. There's some benches. However, the creation of enough space set aside and still maintain egress for accessibility is a bit of a challenge no matter what street in the uptown area. So our ability to bump that out, and I need to note that this is a legislative item. This is something that has to go to council before, before we jump the gun too much on, envisioning, everything. And in my world, we're in the planning process of what could be, but until it's passed through legislation, we're still in the exploratory mode. Now, things are moving fairly quickly because of the need for the dining piece, but as far as this piece, the arts piece, we've got a little bit of time. Think of it as a pilot of sorts.
Right, a proposal.
So to answer your question, further, Beth, is that we have to make sure that we have enough egress on the sidewalks to be able to do all that we need to do.
Well, let me just interject the legislative part there. This is going to have a first reading next Monday, whatever date that is. The next council meeting will be a committee meeting, and there will not be any meetings after that until August. So if we went the normal route of introducing it on Monday and then having 3 readings, this legislation would not be approved until sometime towards the end of August. The mayor would sign it, and with normal legislation like this, it will not take effect until 30 days after his signature, which means that the date that's on the legislation, which is May 1st to August 31st, will be expired for this year. So whatever would happen with Monday, the legislation would not take effect this year. The only way around that would be if we could come up with a legal way of declaring an emergency so that the legislation could get signed and go into effect immediately. The problem with an emergency is it really has to be an emergency. Some disaster has befallen the city, and we need this legislation now. I don't think parklets falls under that category, despite what the uptown business owners may want. Yes, it's an emergency for them, but is that an emergency for the entire city? That's the issue. That's a legal thing. It has to go through the law director. They would have to make the decision. I don't have any opinion about it, but I just want you to be aware of the time. I've looked at the legislation myself. I don't think May 1st to August 31st really gives it enough time under any circumstances. I would much prefer to see it go from May 1st to, say, September 30th. Of course, that drags into the students coming back, and I know there's some objections to that, but I really don't see the harm in it myself. If you're going to do it, I'd say give it as much time as we possibly can. I mean, fall is great to be out on a sidewalk in Athens. My memories, the best memories of a student is hanging out somewhere there's a patio or a stoop or something, and it's nice. The leaves are turning. Things are great. And I want to extend it as long as I possibly could. But that's just me. We'll see what happens on Monday. Now, what council can do on Monday, if everything is set, we could suspend the rules and ram it through. Again, you don't want to do that very often. You do that mainly because there's some sort of major time constraint going on that the city has to meet, which I think we could justify in this case. But that's sort of where it would go through council.
Councilmember Reisner, you make some valid points, and after Monday's council session, there was some feedback there that we're taking into account. So I know that both myself and Paul Logue are working on some revisions to what's being proposed, and we did get feedback from the law office related to changing it from a codified motion, which was originally what was presented, incorporating into code to becoming a pilot program similar to many other things that we do. So we have more flexibility.
Yeah, that'd work.
So just for everyone's awareness that there will be revisions. They're not finalized yet, and they will definitely have to be reviewed by our law director prior to Monday.
Yeah.
So we've got our work cut out for us. But for the purposes of AMAC, designating spaces, let's say the legislation does pass and we do have a quick timeline, thinking long-term, how do we create a policy in the application process for someone that wants to do an art installation, whether that be performance art, music, or something similar. I know that many cities have busking policies. I don't know that the city of Athens has one specifically. For the most part, we allow it on private property, and that's about it. So you look at, I think People's Bank, you'll see some people standing out there in some common spaces. So, is there a way or an opportunity to create specific spaces that kind of activity can happen and it can be turned over, every night of the week for something different? So that's what I want AMAC to be thinking about as we're working through that process. What I'd like to propose would be to have a subgroup of maybe 2 or 3 AMAC members that are willing to work with myself and Mr. Logue on that aspect moving forward on what we could make the streetscape look like for public art.
Beth?
Okay. Next.
I thought you had a
Oh,
question.
no, I was just thumbs upping.
Okay. If the legislation passes, then, and that last bullet point, promote public spaces for arts and culture, then would that be a go-ahead for AMAC to kind of take that on as a project and see where it goes?
It would be as a collaborative thing. Stuff to develop the application, and it would be a revocable application. So we'd be prioritizing the immediate needs and things that we can do, and then working into and leaning into some of the other requests and needs that are out there as we move along.
Have to pay for it too.
Correct.
Well, that depends on what your policy is. If people pay to use the space, then perhaps there's not a cost involved, or at least not a significant cost. Not unlike when Arts West charges rent, not that they make a ton of money. I know, Emily.
No.
But certainly that mitigates costs quite a bit. And I would assume that at least initially we would make the suggestion that some sort of rent be paid. Kelly, unmute.
Mute. So would pop-up art sales be a possibility? I know artists would be willing to pay rent to just be able to set up their booth and sell some art.
So we're not excluding any applicant type of usage of it for retail necessarily, but to transfer that space in the public right of way would require an application of sorts. So let's say you have your art guild that wants to take on a space for a period of time, whether that be 30 days or 3 months or whatever, that space could potentially be used for that purpose. just know that it would be on the applicant to build the platform to standard for accessibility. There is an application fee paid to the city to offset some of the administrative expense and the value of the parking space. We're not capturing all of that, but I don't
Not even close.
Right. I don't see it outside of the realm of reason to think that we'd want to create space for other types of retail. We'd have to look very closely at location and usage and that kind of thing. But I know that in our meeting with AUBA this afternoon, there was some desire from certain businesses that said, we don't want to use, we don't have a specific use for a space, but we'd love to do something creative for the public to create a public usage area. So I could think of a situation where an art guild would build something that could be used as benches or public space most of the time and pop-up space at other times.
Yeah, we also do kids crafts and stuff too. So we could set up, a way for people, if there's a lot of people on the street, they could stop and do work with us, and not necessarily do retail all the time. We could do, pop up art projects and stuff with passerby.
So the intention is for it to be creative.
Right.
Think outside the box to get people to interact with our uptown area, to spend money in Athens, and to find something interesting that not every place is doing. Now, larger cities are doing things that are similar, but cities of our size, we haven't seen too many examples, especially in this area. So I think it could be a draw. And I guess, with my ask for having some AMAC members to come alongside with developing that would be to think through some of those specific scenarios. Our mindset right now is very focused on dining establishments and that kind of thing. So we're not quite, as far as in my mind, not quite to those other uses, but I know that many people here are thinking about those. So we want to be able to incorporate that and be really creative in the process.
Great.
Is there any language in the way it stands addressing the buskers?
No, not to my knowledge. I think it's silent in that area, so it's not saying no and it's not saying yes.
Well,
it's just saying promoting public spaces for arts and culture.
Right. And we've talked before about the piano idea, and buskers in an open space where something else is happening. I love that. So do you think that if that would be feasible, that whatever policies we came up with, we could include that in there and see what happens?
I mean, and Councilmember Reisner can correct me, the legislation is creating the framework and the ground rules. The policies of what's happening in those spaces more drilled down is a matter of developing good policy and good outlines for once that legislation is passed.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Oh, Scott.
Well, I was just looking back through notes, and it looks like there's not a whole lot there that we looked at a few different policies. It was April 2016, maybe March also. At an AMAC meeting, we sort of discussed what different cities are doing in terms of the busking policy. I realize we're not that far along yet or whatever, but we can revisit that. We could go back and look at what we were doing. I'm certainly interested in talking about that stuff for sure.
Sure.
So I can send, I don't know, I think I researched some stuff from different cities back then. I'd be happy to share that with you, Andrew, if you want to take a look at it.
Yeah, I'd love to. That'd be great.
Cool.
Anyone else? Okay.
I can, if Andrew is looking for volunteers,
I volunteer too. And
I was, yeah. You won't have any problem. You get to pick, Andrew.
I'm interested.
And I can help with visual arts.
we're all willing to help. So there you go.
Okay, I'll send out an email to everyone, and maybe what we can do is break down specifically what type of arts and culture, and then kind of farm that out to the expert areas and kind of draw that back together. And then we can have a kind of a subcommittee meeting to work through how to make it all mesh. Does that sound good? So I'll send out an email tomorrow to the group.
Okay. Beth, what's next?
What's next is new business, Roman numeral 5, repainting of the Arts West retaining wall and the lead beverage.
Yes, we have spoken frequently about what we have discovered about the sealant to protect murals from vandalism is damaging the appearance of the murals. This is the case with the mural at Arts West, and Emily actually reached out to Jolena and talked to her about the possibility of repainting it. It may not be a total repaint, but anyway, that's in discussion right now. So, Emily, you want to tell us what's up?
Sure. Can you guys all hear me? So I talked a little bit with Carol about this. So, anyone who's looked at the mural recently, you could tell, it's definitely getting fairly dirty and discolored in some areas. I actually looked at it really closely about an hour ago with one of my incoming work study students who I'm hoping can touch up the mural. His name's Asher Pollock. And what I discussed with Carol, when I first was like, oh, Asher is going to be one of our work study students. He's a really talented painter. He has experience, painting murals. Let's look at retouching the Arts West mural. So basically I reached out to Carol and I asked, does AMAC need to be involved with this process? Like, do we need permission from AMAC to do anything to the mural? And what she told me was we needed to get permission from Joe to do anything to the mural. And I did reach out to Joe. I ran her through what we were planning on doing, and she said, yes, via email, you can do that. Asher can retouch the mural. So we have, we have a positive response from the artist. It's my understanding that that's basically all I need, and then AMAC needs to be aware of that in order for us to do anything. Is that correct?
I would say that we would have to vote on that, which we can do momentarily.
Okay, great. I did do some more things though, as far as, researching what Joe actually put on the mural. I also reached out to Keith Wild. I think everyone probably remembers when Keith spoke to AMAC about a year ago about, basically the evils of the graffiti coat product. I did some research through him and Joe, and I think that the city and Joe used the Sherwin-Williams graffiti coat. And I called the manager of the Athens Sherwin-Williams store, talked him through our, basically like, this is our problem. Can we even retouch if the graffiti coat is on the mural? And he was not very positive. He actually was basically like, unless you sandblast it, you're not going to be able to repaint it. He basically insinuated, this is not a product to put over art. at all. Like it's mostly for like a blank cinder block wall that constantly is getting tagged, that you don't care about repainting in any way. Like that's really what the product is for. But so having said that, I also brought this up in my staff meeting today. I think really what would be maybe a good step towards refurbishing the mural first is getting it power washed. I think that would be very helpful, maybe to see if the debris can be taken off. Terry Moore, my director, actually, she knows I'm speaking at this meeting. She suggested I talk to Andrew about that, see if the city could bring out a power washer to at least, clean it off, see what we can do. However, when I was looking at the mural today with Asher, we noticed that part of the mural had been touched up. It's a purple area already. It's obvious that it had been repainted over, the original mural, and it seems to be doing fine. It's not falling off. It's fine. So it's kind of begging the question to me, can we just touch things up over this graffiti coat, and is it going to just be fine? I don't know. I'd like some feedback about this.
Gosh, I'd be worried that power washing would damage the mural. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally...
Well, my thought about the power washing part was it would make sense to at least wash it a little bit, because since it's so low to the ground, I'm sure it's covered in all sorts of dirt and debris and stuff like that, kind of like the one up at Simpson Avenue. So that was, I don't know if power washing is necessarily what needs to be done, but some sort of washing before you start, putting some fresh paint on it.
I'm not an expert by any means on murals and the coatings, but I would think that using a mild detergent like a Dawn dishwashing with a low power hose, just to rinse it down. So basically using like a chamois and wash it like you would wash a car, and then rinse it down to see kind of the condition would be the least invasive way of cleaning it and seeing what the status would be. And if there are areas that need to be touched up, if there's a way to do that safely, I think that would be a first step.
Right. About a year or two ago, I did have some students go out and try to wash the mural. It was not, they used sponges. The dirt is so embedded, it really didn't do very much. Part of my thought of a power washer is it might actually help to get the graffiti coat to slough off. So it may be helpful with retouching the paint.
Emily, when was that purple touch-up done? How long after the original painting was it done?
That's a really good question. And as I was walking around with Asher today, I was like, I need to reach out to Joe and ask when this was put up, because I know she did it. I want to say maybe it was about 2 years ago. And like I said, it looks fine,
It's on top of the graffiti coat.
It was, yeah.
Wow, interesting.
So my guess is that if you repainted it and then power washed it, it might wash the whole mural off. Because that's the whole purpose of the graffiti code, that if there's graffiti on it, you can wash it off. So that's, as long as nobody messes with it.
What's the expected lifetime of the mural?
Well, that's a really good question, because this mural we're discussing was put in 2016, so it was about 4 years ago. And the lifespan of a mural with outdoor latex paint is supposed to be about 10 years, and it's already looking it's really not looking in good shape, which is why I'm talking to you guys today.
Well, let me throw this out. It's public art, and the mural area essentially is a large canvas. Why would you want the same piece of art there for 10 years? Why not why not cycle it through? You give it 5 years, get a new artist in, paint something new. Always have something new there, something fresh. I mean, that's, we're not talking the Last Supper by, Da Vinci here. You're talking about an outdoor mural exposed to the elements. It's going to wear, and that's part of it. I mean, that's just inevitable. So why not just embrace that and say, okay, let's get some new art. Let's find some more artists out there.
I still feel like it's kind of on the new side, frankly.
I do too.
I don't. I'm sorry. I mean, 5 years. I mean, come on.
But it hasn't been 5 years yet. We're just going into the 4th year now.
Mm-hmm. And cost is also an issue.
I remember the controversy this thing was, and coming to council and stuff. So yeah.
That actually the controversy happened years ago, and then nothing happened for a long time, and then just a few years ago, Joe got some grant money and did it through a project actually through OU, and we kind of did it that way. Yeah. So it wasn't, and then it was not controversial when we did it at that point.
No, because everybody forgot about it.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't.
They didn't come to council and complain.
Well, that's certain people moved, as I recall.
It was the woman that moved.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. But
well, let me just say this: the more you invest in restoration, could be put forward towards something new. So
that's part of my question. What would touching it up cost?
Well, that's a really good question. I think one of the things to keep in mind is, as we're discussing, should we put something new in? I have a student for the summer who's working, 25 hours a week for me. He has the painting skill. He's been approved by the original artist to do retouches. We also happen to have all the original colors. So I think it's actually kind of ambiguous as to whether we would even have to pay anything to retouch it. And if we do, it's going to be a very minimal cost. I understand the desire to see new artwork. But as somebody who's been associated with Arts West for quite some time, it took a lot of effort to get it installed to begin with. And Joe got a grant of several $1,000s to install the mural to begin with. And I think that retouching it would almost cost nothing. And we would not have to go through the process of bidding out through RFP a new mural. And, I don't even know where the funding for that would come from.
Okay, so with, if what you're saying is you have somebody that can do it, you've got the paint ready, you want to touch up, what I would propose you do would be to find a test section,
Right.
Try it, find out if it works. If it does work and you can, put it to the test, spray it, do different things to it to see if it'll stick to the anti-graffiti coating, which it sounds kind of like it defeats the purpose if we can paint over it, then I don't see any issue. If it seems like it's going to be a bigger lift where it's going to become more expensive and not doable, then perhaps we look at doing something new in that space, in the not too distant future, with the artist's approval, of course, and making sure that we look at the terms of what was agreed to when it was first installed. And I remember all of the conversations over and over, over a 10-year period, off and on with that space. So I feel the pain too when it came to finally seeing something happen there. But it did move the needle. It did make it, getting that in place helped move things forward with other projects in the process. So I don't think it's as monumental as it was the first time around.
Right. And I was the commissioner who handled that RFP, and all of the tremendous pushback before the RFP even came out and all sorts of stuff. So for me, I think, I feel protective of it because it got put there and it took a lot to get it there. And also it's visual art. Visual art is different than performance art in that it lasts and it's meant to be lasting. Now, when it's meant to expire, I don't know how we determine that, but I don't think it's dead yet, as they say in Monty Python.
I have a question about the graffiti coat. Is it, and even in the long term, in 10 years, if we wanted to paint over it, how do you remove it? Is it something that you have to use some kind of acetate to remove it? Or kind of mineral spirits, or, how do you get that off?
That was what, I discussed with the Sherwin-Williams manager. He basically implied, and, I talked with Keith Wild. He knows that the Armory Park mural, the Stimson Dove mural, like basically all the murals, with the exception of the water treatment plant mural, have this stuff on it.
Right.
And what he said is he seems to think you would either need a sandblaster.
Oh, okay. You already said that.
Yeah, or you could use some sort of really heavy solvent to get rid of it. I'm very interested, though, to try. My suspicion is that formula may make it so graffiti, like a light spray, is not you paint in a smooth coat and it's fine. Like, I'm beginning to suspect that might be the case.
You had to repeat all that, Emily.
That's fine. I love hearing myself talk. It's fine.
Worth a shot.
I think so too. Something else Asher said is we might be able to sand it. We may be able to actually take a sandpaper, sand block, and just sand it off, and then do our retouches.
Help the paint grab onto it better.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Andrew, procedurally, should we vote to do this? I think we should, but should it go to council at all? It's no cost.
This would not fall under legislative action.
Yeah.
If anything, you could pass a resolution in AMAC supporting touching it up, since the artist has supported it. I don't even know that that's necessary. You could do that though, just as a motion of support though.
I think it would be good and try it, sure.
Okay. Sounds good. If it works, do you want me to give a report back? Like, how would you like to?
Yes, that's my,
yeah. Do that.
Because that's what we said we'd do if something is changed in someone's artwork. Okay, so am I correct that next is the policies?
Yes, Roman numeral 6, work session as time allows. Review of H. The topic is relocation or purchased or commissioned artwork.
Right. So hopefully you all took the time to read through this and see if there was anything that you questioned. I felt that there were two issues that are kind of still looming in front of us. The Arts West mural was part of it because that question was coming up. And the other one is Hebe. And I think this section addresses the Hebe. So I went through and under the first part, it says, it talks about if as necessary or appropriate, transfer or remove a city-owned artwork public site for another. That's Hebe. Okay? And it talks about the process and how to go about it. Did you find places that you thought were problematic in terms of the wording, or that we would like to add to? Did you look at them?
Can you direct us, please? I'm trying to relocate it.
Okay, it's at the bottom of the page, marked page 4.
I'm sorry. What I mean by that is, when did you resend or the version that we're looking at, or did you?
About ages ago.
Okay.
Before,
so it's got
exactly.
Okay.
Which I know that the formatting in it is terrible. I thought that in where it asked for written permission from the original artist, the email, it doesn't have to be a letter with the stamp.
Donor, should it say like donor or like anything like that?
It does say that elsewhere. Add that language under it. L does say exactly that thing. Yeah. Then it goes on talking about the only thing that I thought we should do with heat. I think Steve had said he was going to do is explore the means of resolving the concerns prompting the relocation. And to me, it's not even a real question because it was already moved once. It was moved from the courthouse outside to inside the water tank because it was getting vandalized. So it's not even where it was originally commissioned to be. But I do think that there is a problem still with the water treatment plant people that they don't want it to leave. But other than that, there is nothing in here that doesn't say we can't for moving it. Well, the main reason for moving it is that it is not in a place where the public really sees it. And so to make it more lovable to the city would be my comment. Then there's this, back to the whole thing about every 5 years, the city, that AMAC is responsible. A list of artworks that we have and those that are to be decommissioned. We have to figure out some way to resolve that. We did soften the language where we earlier.
Where is that you're referring to?
Under 2 on page 6. Meeting we had, we talked about the other thing. Well, of course, then I printed a fresh copy, so don't have it.
Where does it say, I'm sorry, where does it say the part about reviewing it every 5 years, though?
Deaccession review every 5 years needed.
Okay, so it's under letter I, number.
Pardon?
No.
Have we ever done
We actually have. I'll have to get my brain to think about that a bit. And I know some artwork that John Spropforth did at the park right here, Highland Park.
all that he took up?
That was deaccessioned.
Simple as just getting all that stuff together,
Right.
updating it, and then every 5 years kind of do a review of if it's already been done. It might not be as difficult as it seems, is what I'm saying.
However, in the first part of the whole document that we talked about at the last meeting, it says that we're supposed to
Do that, right.
keep an inventory, and that came up with a lovely word that I'm not finding to soften that a little. Josh, do you remember?
I don't remember the word offhand.
It's in the minutes.
Yeah.
Is this under Roman numeral 2,
Yes.
letter C,
Yes.
number 12.
6. No, 6 and 7 said that AMAC is to coordinate all fiscal and logistic arts installations. And
Yeah.
at the last meeting, we voted to change that to participate in. And
Okay.
with 7, all necessary signage, including all ID labels and plaques, changed to participate in. So we might.
Right. I think the part about the review, number 12, conduct a biannual review during odd years of all holdings in the art collections. During this review, AMAC will A, inventory the collection, B, examine the condition of each piece to determine restoration or preservation needs, and C, examine the display or storage conditions of each piece. That sounds like a big responsibility. Sure is wholly appropriate. Maybe you all disagree, but maybe there's a way to soften that wording as well.
I agree.
Did we lose Carol?
Does appear that way.
Yeah, she froze. And
Well, I guess that means I'm in charge. No, just kidding.
I think that means that this meeting
Is adjourned. Or
off, right?
well, it is 6:57 after all. So, and when I came upstairs to get my famous blue folder, all of you viewers at home, you should know that I have a famous blue folder where I've been keeping records since 2011. I mean, excuse me, downstairs in the other space. So I don't know, was there anything else on the agenda? Does anybody have that in front of them?
announcement, other business. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Other business?
Yeah, announcements and other business was the last one. Number 7.
Okay. How about this? How about we say, because we lost Carol, we notate that, perhaps, and we can continue the discussion of this in our next meeting. We sort of left off as she faded out there. This is Roman numeral 2, letter C, number 12, about the inventorying piece and language for that, unless you all want to stick it out here. But I'm thinking perhaps we move that to our next meeting. Okay.
Yep.
So, okay, cool.
I concur.
So then next was other business. Does anybody have any other business?
Not me.
Okay. And then I believe you said announcements.
Yes.
Was that okay? Any announcements?
I don't know if anybody, where is that? The Arts for America are doing let me see if I can find it on Facebook. Americans for the Arts, they're doing kind of forum, the annual convention and public art and civic design conference. They're doing it virtually on the 23rd and the 25th. It is kind of, you do have to pay to attend, but if anybody is interested in that, I'm seriously considering doing it, but I don't know if I want to spend the $275 to actually do the 3 days. I'm still debating. So just to let you guys know that I will throw up that information on the chat in case anybody is interested.
That reminds me that today is also for our friends in the Columbus area. Today is the Big Give. If you're not familiar with this, this is through the Columbus Foundation, and many nonprofit organizations participate in the Big Give with the Columbus Foundation, including many arts organizations in Columbus. They do matching gifts, and they also are waiving the cost, the fees for the credit card fees to the recipients. So that means that all of the nonprofits who receive funding get 100% of the funding, and then actually 200.
Wow, that's fun.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's a long-standing tradition, and if you were to Google it, you would find that the Big Give started today at 10 a.m. They tomorrow at 6 p.m. because the system was down quite a bit today. But if you've got some favorite arts organizations there in Columbus that you'd like to support, I'd encourage you to do that at this time because it's a great boost on a donation.
Great.
Any other announcements?
I think that when I was trying to get onto Zoom, Carol might have made the announcement about the poetry party for Wendy McVicker at Arts West. Okay. It was like kind of going in and out at that time. But it's on Friday, June 26th from 6 to 8. Everyone is welcome to bring an inspirational, uplifting poem with the community. I'm really excited to be able to do that for Wendy. Unfortunately, she had kind of a welcoming meet and greet event scheduled at Arts West for May, and that obviously could not happen. So this is a kind of like a replacement event. And I'm hoping she actually does a regular series with us because I think it's a really good idea.
Thank you for posting that in the chat box, Chelsea. She put in there the link to the Columbus. Looking at my calendar here, and I believe our next meeting should take place on Wednesday, July 8th. So